March meeting to order. This meeting may be recorded and there's no expectation of privacy. We will now rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Rajah, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Leonard,
Here.
Ms. Bretz,
Here.
Ms. Bisco, Mr. Bajalid, Mr. DeSerat,
Here.
Dr. Fike,
Yes.
Ms. Humberger, Ms. Mock,
Here.
Ms. Nemec,
Here.
Ms. Rao,
Here.
Mr. Shaw,
Here.
Mr. Cedar,
Here.
Ms. Shear,
Here.
Mr. Toman,
Here.
Mr. Vela,
Here.
Ms. Willeen,
Here.
Ms. Yerga, "13 present, 4 absent."
Thank you. Okay, excuse me. Did anybody pick up the 3x5 card and fill them out to comments from the citizens?
No, we have not received any.
Okay, so we're gonna move on. Oh, yeah. Executive session announcement, we had executive session for approximately an hour prior to this meeting, at which time we discussed personnel and contractual matters. You guys hear me back there?
It is, yeah, just gotta be closer.
I thought that big mouth was. Can you hear me now? I don't have to eat this thing. Can you hear me back there? Okay. We'll now move on to approval of our minutes. I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 25th meeting.
Motion Mock. Second meeting.
We have a motion second, this is a voice vote, all in favor aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay, motion carries. I have no correspondence listed unless it's been changed to that status, we'll move on. Now I go to WIU Foundation. Ms. Nemec, Yerga, or Murphy, you have anything to state for the foundation?
Sure. This Saturday at 11 o'clock will be the Champions of Art. And I think we discussed last week the Foundation Spring Bingo Bash, and it was requested that everyone have flyers so that you have the information. So seated at your places today is the information regarding the Foundation Bingo. There's also some additional ones over at the sign-in table if you want to take any back to your schools. Two things to consider. One, if you want to make any kind of a donation for prizes to be awarded at the bingo, or I think we had previously discussed if any of the board members would be willing to work the event and help in serving the food, that would help in curtailing some of the costs. So if you could let Dr. Conway or myself, anyone who may be interested in doing so, and I can pass that along to Ms. Martha.
If you want to restate your name so that anybody wants to contact you can reach out to you.
Board members, Janice Naming.
Yeah. Again, I can't remember all the board members, so I just want to make sure everybody else was clear on that. Okay, Dr. Conway, do you have anything on that subject?
Nope, for anyone who wants a flyer, they are located over by the agendas.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, now to financial reports. Are there any motions under financial reports that anybody feels need pulled for discussion? This will be a voice vote, and this will be motion to approve FR 2425-026 through FR 2425-028.
I make a motion to approve requests.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second, Rob.
We have a motion and a second. Voice vote, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to board committee reports. Does any committee member or any committee chair have any reports for tonight? We will do aye, so we'll move on. Executive Director's Report, Dr. Conway.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. President. First and foremost, we want to recognize any induction participants. No one has let me know that they were coming. Dr. Stragan, do we have any induction participants with us tonight?
We do not.
All right, well, thank you for verifying that for me. Also, I'm going to recognize the administrators who have joined us, other than those who are in cabinet with us tonight. We have Lauren Cunningham, Diane Fierley, we have Lori Andrews. We also have Dr. Becky McGee. Becky McGee, you're here, of course. Becky Henderson, and also a special guest from Curriculum Services, Sue Soltis. So thank you very much. And I believe I caught everyone from the administrative team that is here. So thanks again. As we have been every month, we have been introducing the board to an administrator or two of what their story is, how they got here, what they do here. And it's my pleasure to introduce a future doctor, Lauren Cunningham. So Lauren, if you don't mind coming up and give us this 3-hour presentation you have planned for us tonight.
Sounds great. Well, thank you for having me. Can you all hear me well enough? Great. As Dr. Conway said, I'm Lauren Cunningham. I'm a curriculum services supervisor here. I started my career at the Blairsville-Salzburg School District as a middle and high school English teacher when I was 22 years old. Can't believe they put me in front of kids at 22, but they did. And just 3 days into my career, I had like a career-changing trajectory. And what had happened that early on is that the teacher I was replacing had stayed with me for a couple of days. And the last day that she was there, my 3rd day, I asked her for a copy of the curriculum so that I knew what to teach for the rest of the school year. I had been approved to start working in December. And she handed me a 3x5 index card with a couple of notes that she wrote about some topics to teach. And in that moment, feeling woefully unprepared to start my journey as an educator, I quickly learned that I want to help other educators with curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And so I stayed for 12 more years in that school district. I learned how to hone my craft as a teacher. I started to take leadership roles as a department chair for our English department, and then an instructional coach, K-12 in the school district. And in my 12th year there, that's when a position opened at Aaron, IU28, in the curriculum department. And so I thought, what a great opportunity to join an IU and to be able to help teachers across the region with supporting their curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And so I was a curriculum services supervisor there for a couple of years. I worked on some ELA specific projects. I worked on technology, instructional technology. The pandemic hit. I was an E-Academy teacher for Westmoreland Intermediate Unit part-time for 7 years, and that experience served me well during the pandemic because I was able to train over 700 teachers across 2 IU regions. We worked very closely with IU6 at that time, and that work that I did during the pandemic earned me a promotion to curriculum director at IU28, where I had the opportunity to lead a team of curriculum and TAC specialists, and my role there was to really help develop their adult learning skills, and so I did that internally, and then externally I worked with districts on their accelerated learning plans. How are we moving forward beyond the pandemic to help support learning in our schools? And so when an opportunity came open 2.5 years ago here at this IU, I decided, knowing the team, knowing Tim well from my E-Academy days, I would come here, and I'm thankful for the opportunity. It's given me a lot of variety of different experiences. I'm the STEM point of contact here, and so I work with school districts on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and that's a big job right now. In 2022, our state adopted new STEELS standards, so science, technology, and engineering standards, and anytime we have a shift that's this large in our educational environment, it takes a lot of work to get teachers to learn about instructional shifts and how to implement them in their classroom. And so I've been doing tons of workshops across the region, helping teachers with that. But then also leading a STEM network here at the IU, hosting robotics trainings for teachers. I get to work with students a little bit still. I hold student competitions. We have one that's coming up on Monday. It's our Connects STEM Design Challenge. We've done drone competitions in collaboration with our TAC team here at the IU. And I also help districts think about how to find the gaps in their current science curriculum and help them to shift that new curriculum aligned to the standards. I still do some work with English language arts. I've done about 6 or 7 text-dependent analysis workshops this year here at the IU. I'm leading an ELA curriculum audit for one of our school districts currently, so I still get to be involved with my first love, which is English. And then I help lead the principals networks here. We gather our principal leaders so that they have the opportunity to collaborate and network with each other. I also help lead our comprehensive planning process as we're moving forward and thinking about our organizational goals for the next few years. And then I also help with our play, our asynchronous professional learning platform, both building content for that and helping talk with districts about different types of content that they need in that system to support their learners. On that note, and I'm almost finished, I reached out recently to Aaron IU 28, and we developed a partnership to help bring their curriculum consultants on board with us to develop content. And so we're expanding our reach into different areas to give more teachers access to the professional learning opportunities that we have. So we're excited for that. Eventually that will turn into a partnership for CPE courses, which will continue to expand our reach into Western Pennsylvania. And finally, a lot of times people will just call me to ask for some support and how to plan professional development, whether I'm delivering it or not. Because over the years, I've really taken a really strong liking and an expertise to facilitating adult learning, and that has translated into my dissertation topic, of which I'm defending next month, thank goodness. And that's all about me in a very brief amount of time.
Thank you very, very much, Lauren. Thank you for joining us, and I know having your teammates with you here tonight means a lot. In fact, we're going to highlight the whole team here. And Tim Hamill, if you don't mind kind of sharing the Steels and Service Day that our intermediate unit organized, executed, so everyone can hear all the great things about it.
Sure. So as you heard Lauren mention, she has a lot to do with our Steels initiative, which it's huge. And there's so much to that. I'm sure you've dealt with it in your own districts. You've heard talk of it, the adjustments that have to be made. So when it comes to need right now, it is a big need. This past month, not this Monday, but the week before, there was a regional in-service day, and I'm gonna throw the credit Lauren's way because Lauren was the lead on building this day. We had over 200 educators from across the entire region. That included districts here in Westmoreland County and outside of our county. And they all came to that day, Franklin Regional. We used their new facility at their beautiful new intermediate school because we didn't have room here for everybody. It was an amazing day for a couple of reasons. Number one, this team shined. They made this IU proud on that day because they were the ones who were the face of the whole program that day. In addition, it was the network that Lauren has spent well over 2 years building at this point in the field of STEM and the connections she's made internally within your districts and within IUs across our region. So getting 200 people together from, was it 19 total?
19 districts.
Yeah, 19 districts total that day to study and do workshops on the steel standards and to network and to come together in a way that teachers just don't get the opportunity to do enough. As a team, we've had the conversation that a lot of times those one-off in-service days can be lost in time. They don't have the value that we would hope they might, because they tend to not fully fit the needs of those who are attending, at least not 100%. On this day, those teachers who were at that event walked away feeling like they got something important that they took back to their classroom, connections made, something learned, something that they were able to walk home and say, that was a day well spent. In retrospect, when you look at that day and what it took to put together, yes, it was some work. And if Lauren will probably tell you, it was a bit of a stressor on her pulling that day together, just making all the connections, but doable.
Yeah.
Right? Our thoughts moving forward are that this is replicable. This can be done again. And it doesn't have to be steel standards. It could be social studies teachers. It could be special area teachers like music teachers, art teachers, phys ed teachers, those teachers who never really get the opportunity to network together and have meaningful conversation around their craft. And so what our team learned that day and what we got out of that day was we can do more with this. But one of the things that needs to happen, and I think this is a message that you can carry back with you, is that in order to do this, there has to be cooperation, number one. Because 19 school districts working together on something is pretty rare. But we did it, and we did it successfully. So it can be done. The organizational part of it is just getting that day when you can release teachers together. So there's a little bit of work that needs to be done across the region on aligning some in-service time. It's not that hard to figure out which days might work. There are some really, actually we get about maybe 75% on a couple of them already. So with a few moves here or there, we might just end up with a countywide, at least 1 or 2 days a year where we could do this type of event and maybe have 3 or 4 of them running across the county on a given day. So I want to just personally thank the team for that day, the work that they did. I was part of it in that I sat down and talked to teachers recording the day in a podcast format. We're going to share that with you as soon as it's published. That's going to come out, I hope, Friday. So you get a chance to hear from some of the teachers that were there that day. And hope we see this happen real soon again.
Yeah, we'll make sure we send a podcast link to the board for them
Absolutely.
to take a look at it. So thank you, Tim. Thank you for your leadership.
And thank you to the team.
The whole curriculum services team as well. We really appreciate all of the hard work that you've done to make that work. And a special shout out to Franklin Regional School District, and specifically the assistant superintendent that was very involved, Jen, and
Yeah.
forgive me, I can't pronounce her last.
Baginski.
Say it again.
Baginski. Yes.
Was a major part, of that effort.
As well as the
Regional.
principal there.
And the principal.
Dr. Buffon was
Yeah.
spot on, Johnny on the spot, really helping us get the day put together.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks for sharing that celebration. Mr. President, that would conclude the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Executive Director Conway and team. We'll now move on to old business, and it appears there is none for tonight. And under Executive Services 11A, we have no business to conduct tonight. But under Human Resources 11B, there is some business. Does anybody wish to pull any of these motions for the discussion of the HR 2425-072 to HR 2425-078?
Yes, I'd like to pull HR 2425-072. I had a couple of questions.
I can't quite hear, which do you want to pull?
HR 072.
Okay, that's the first one up.
Yes.
So,
I had a specific question and a general question. The specific question is, why are we losing Lori Andrews? I was asked to ask about this.
That would be a matter discussed during an executive session as a personnel matter.
Okay, and my second question then was, why are we having so many resignations and turnover in staff? Because it seems like every month we have at least 2, 3, or 4 people resigning. So what's the issue with so much turnover on our staff?
So intermediate units do operate much differently than that of school districts. And if you would go back to the historic minutes, you will see that there have been resignations and retirements all throughout every single year that is going on here. So this is not an anomaly for people to leave mid-year for other opportunities. And so there's no abnormal pattern that you're identifying here. It's just intermediate units have more coming and going than that of regular school districts.
It just seems to me that like our students would benefit from people staying around longer than a lot of staff turnover. That would just be my only 2 questions about that. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. That was HR 2425-072. Now, we would, this will be a roll call vote, but we'd like to have a motion to approve HR 2425-072 through 7-8.
I make a motion to approve funds. Second, Amy.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Roll call, excuse me,
Okay.
Mr. President, it's roll call,
Roll call.
because there are hiring, so we have to have a
Oh, yeah.
roll call.
Roll call vote, sorry about that.
That's okay, that's okay.
I even said it was gonna be a roll call vote. So could you call the roll?
Yes, I can. Ms. Bretz?
Yes.
Mr. DeSerat?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Ms. Mock?
Yes.
Ms. Nemec?
Yes.
Ms. Rao? I'm sorry, Ms. Rao?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Cedar?
Yes.
Ms. Shear?
Yes.
Mr. Toman?
Yes.
Mr. Vella?
Yes.
Ms. Willeen?
Yes.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes.
13 yeses, 0 nos, motion's carried.
Thank you. The motion is carried. We will now move on to curriculum services. Is there any motion that needs pulled for discussion under CS 2425-009 through 011? If not, this will be a voice vote, so all in favor to approve.
Mr. President?
I'm sorry. Somebody else need something?
Yeah, I just have one question, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Maybe just a point of clarification, but we're under section 12 curriculum services, correct?
We are.
Okay. 12A, CS 2425-009, and I apologize, 007, to approve attendance of Lori Andrews. I think we just confirmed her resignation.
No, it's to rescind that.
To rescind, I
Yeah.
apologize.
No worries.
Got it, I see, it's above it. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, now, we would, I lose my track again.
Motion.
We need a motion to approve CS 2425-009 through 2425-011. Motion, Mark? We have a motion.
Second, Cedar.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye? Okay, thank you. Okay, you can still hear me back here, right?
So, executive, early childhood, there are none.
Under item 13, early childhood services, I see none. 14, financial services. This will be a roll call vote, but is there any, is there any further discussion on this motion? Any questions? Okay, I'd like to have a motion to approve FS 2425-017.
I
I make a motion, Brooks.
Second, Tillman.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, it's a roll call vote.
Roll call.
Somebody else needs to take his job.
Roll call.
Yeah, this is a roll call vote, Madam Secretary.
Yes. Mr. Dieseroth?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Ms. Mock?
Yes.
Ms. Nemec?
Yes.
Ms. Rao?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Cedar?
Yes.
Ms. Shearer?
Yes.
Mr. Toman?
Yes.
Mr. Vela?
Yes.
Ms. Willeen?
Yes.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes.
Ms. Bretz?
Yes.
13 yes, 0 no's, motion carried.
Thank you. Okay, now, student services, item 15. This will be a voice vote. Are there any motions that need pulled for discussion on SS 24, 25, 36 through 42? Hearing none, we would entertain a motion to approve SS 24, 25, 036 through 24, 25, 042.
Motion, Mock.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second, Rao.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, under technology and innovation services, item 16, I see nothing. School board, item 17. There'll be a motion to approve SB 2425-052. Is there any discussion on this motion? This is a voice vote. Could we have a motion to approve SB 2425-052?
Make that motion.
We have a motion.
Second, Mock.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are now up to item 18, PSBA Policy News Network updates. I know of none. That's 19, policy first readings, none. 20, board policy administrative regulations. Do you have any update or anything we need to talk about there, Dr. Conway? I know of none.
That there are none, just for the board's review at this time.
Okay, 21, board operation guidelines. This will be a first reading. So, just the first reading of SB 2425-050. Are there any comments, questions, discussion on that?
This is for the policy 005.
For the board operating guidelines.
The operating guidelines pertinent to 050.
All right, well, because I had questions about the policy that went out. So are we doing that here and now, or how are we? The attachment of the policy itself.
I'm not sure. There's a guidelines, these were distributed, correct?
Yeah, they were
Everybody
part
else?
of the agenda. And Stephen, do you mind bringing up the document? So Mr. Vela, you're referring to the board operating guideline that is associated with policy 005.
Well, I'm referring to policy committee of the whole procedures. Is that?
Yeah, that's what we're
Yes,
doing right
that's
now,
what-
yeah.
that's
Board
what-
operating guideline.
that's-
It's not a
okay.
policy, it's an operating guideline.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's what I'm referring to.
So that is what is up, that is for,
And that's
actually,
what's up for first read.
I believe it's
We're
the second
adopting
first read.
guidelines, but it's not being adopted as a policy.
Okay, yeah, that is the first reading. I assume everybody has that. If not, it's available, it's online. So that is up for first reading.
Did you have questions?
That was a question. What I'm trying to understand is, you're saying this is a guideline, but we're voting to adopt these guidelines for the board at some point, or how, being that this is a first reading? So is it being adopted, when it's adopted, it's becoming policy?
It becomes approved board operating guideline. It's not a policy.
Okay.
So today it's a first read, and then next month, if there's no revisions to this right now, it goes on to the April board meeting as a second read, at which time the board will then vote upon whether to accept it or not to accept it.
Okay. Then how do revisions and deliberation, how does that occur?
It would be at the pleasure of the board president. any recommendations that you would wanna make as a board, do that. I would, ask that Attorney Edwards help, in that, because she has played a major role in making sure the narrative is as it is currently.
So the board president would recognize somebody who has questions or comments for discussion here.
But my preference though would be, if somebody does have, in order to have nothing lost in translation, the policy procedures are ready, so any amendments or any adjustments or any changes I would like to have submitted in writing, so that it doesn't have to be dug out of minutes or lost in the discussion.
I recognize those comments were conflicting one another, so let me clarify if that's okay. Currently, as it stands at the moment, if you have questions, comments, et cetera, review, this would be the time to bring those forward based on how the operations have been lately. What Mr. Leonard's comments go to is what the proposed guideline would, how that would be modified, so that
Right.
if a board member does have comments and questions after receiving not this one particularly, but in the future, if this is what's adopted, if a board member would have questions, comments, proposed revisions on a future proposed policy, like an actual policy, those be emailed to the executive director, who will then compile a list of all of those comments, questions, whatnot, and then that would be presented to the board at the subsequent meeting.
Yep.
Which would then be open for discussion and whatnot, so it's a matter of consolidating and making sure everybody has an opportunity to provide feedback on those proposed future policies.
Okay. Well, that's, okay. Well, so this doesn't state questions, or it simply says revisions. So that was one of the issues or questions I had about it, and that's because I'm trying to figure out, where does deliberation go once this is adopted? I mean, the whole point is, as a board or a committee, if you had a committee, you would deliberate on anything that we vote on, right? And it feels like, and I understand the history of this, I understand why we're trying to do this, but something seems to be missing here, and that's what I don't know, I want to try to have a discussion about that, or, you know, how do we deliberate and discuss this before we vote on it next month? First, we can't do it through email, right? We can't
Correct.
deliberate through email for two reasons. One, it's not really deliberation unless everybody's on that chain, and it's supposed to go exclusively to the director. And two, we can't deliberate in the dark like that anyway. It needs to be here in public. So if whether it be this or a future policy, when does deliberation, public deliberation take place? And I don't see that in here. I don't even see questions in here. I simply see exclusively writing revisions or changes, but you don't, I mean, until you can talk about it, it's tough to even suggest changes. I mean, I can suggest changes to this right now. Nobody else in this room is gonna know about it, only Dr. Conway, and if 5 other people do the same thing, you know what I mean? When do we get to actually deliberate on a policy or anything that we're voting on if we were following these guidelines? That's what I'm trying to understand. And then I had specific questions, like, there's announcements, I wanna know how you define announcements. You have board agenda, board meeting agenda, and then agenda, those 3 words are used separately as those 3 sets are did, so what does all that refer to? So there's other clarifications that I had just in the wording and the verbiage. And then there's an opportunity for like the board to comment and stuff, so it wasn't clear when that was. To me, that was coming back to deliberation, but it's not clear when that happens in here, so it's just not, these guidelines to me aren't very clear. I don't know if anybody else had any similar concerns.
There was a draft, it's been reviewed by in-house executive director and our legal team. So, and this is the results, this is the first reading. I have nothing to add or subtract. I mean, that's why it's a first reading.
Right, so when it goes to second reading or goes to vote, are we going to have the discussion on bringing up, the points that I'm bringing up now? When are we gonna discuss? I mean, it's like, that's the whole point, yeah, you put something together, it's out, now I've got questions. When is it appropriate to actually discuss this thing, as opposed to go to second, because you can't vote to adopt something we haven't had a chance to even talk about, unless everybody just happens to agree, which maybe everybody does, but to me, I'd like some more clarification on it at some point before it goes to a vote.
I agree 100%. I'm one of 17. I'm sitting in the president's seat. I'm not any more important than any other board member. I'd like to hear from any and every board member that has something to say. I don't have anything else to say, but anybody else as well.
If I may, Mr.
Yeah.
President, I think at least a piece of your question can be answered with, under number 5, where that list that's compiled of all of the comments, in here it does say recommend revision, so perhaps that is a point of consideration for the administration to modify it further, to include comments, questions. But specifically with regard to revisions, let me back up, with the comments and questions, to include that as maybe a separate section, and not necessarily have it as a revision to be voted upon. So the way that it's reading currently, it would be that the proposed revisions, understanding that there's the separate issue of the comments and questions, the revisions that are proposed by the board after that first reading would be presented at the subsequent meeting. The board as a whole would decide whether or not to go with those proposed revisions. If they do, and it's more than a minor clerical type of a change, then it would trigger a new first reading for the next meeting. So it would be with the adoption of that proposed revision, triggering the new reading, and that would continue, that process would continue until there would be no further revisions requested and then adopted by the board. With respect to the questions and comments portion of your question here on this revised policy, there is nothing specifically within this operating guideline that I'm seeing here. So whether that could be something that could be added, that could be a point of discussion now.
Okay, so 2 parts. One is, it says each submitted recommended revision by a board member will be voted upon by the entire board. So 17 people, if you get 35 revisions, we're gonna go through and vote on all those revisions in a board meeting? That's what this says we're gonna do. I just wanna make sure that's clear. As opposed to actually just having a conversation and deliberating on it. But that's what this says, we would do. And when you say revision, that's a revision to the entire thing, and that may not be the case. Most people may have, like here, I got a problem just with this one little section. So am I supposed to go home and rewrite this, submit a revision of this entire policy to include 2 sentences that I might have an issue with, that I might recommend, hey, do this instead? So now Dr. Conway's gonna get 35 complete policies revised, trying to figure out where the differences are. Or are we just submitting, hey, I got a problem with this right here? So that's 1. 2, the questions part, if we start asking questions and emails and everything, we're getting back to deliberation, are we not?
I would not recommend that you ask questions, and
Right,
let me
that's-
restate that, I'm sorry. You are more than welcome to ask questions of the executive director, to the executive director, as a board member, as a member of the public, etc. With that, I would not recommend posing a question for discussion among the entire board.
Right.
That's
what I
where
mean.
the
So
hard
that's,
numbers.
so then again, where's the opportunity to deliberate? Because it doesn't make sense for me to go home and rewrite this whole revision. Maybe it does, but to me, it's like, well, I might be completely alone on this, and this makes no sense to anybody, so what, I make, all right, well, if nobody else thinks that that's an issue, then maybe I wouldn't even bother doing that, but I don't know unless I can ask people, right? And the only place I can do that would be either here in public, or in a public committee, but something that's public. I can't do that over email because that's gonna violate the Sunshine Act. So that's coming back to where, when is the deliberation process for anything that we're voting on, let alone a policy, if we follow these guidelines. And I'm not necessarily asking for an answer tonight, but I think we need to figure that out, because otherwise what this looks like it's doing, or appears to be doing potentially, inadvertently perhaps, is making sure that can't happen, and I don't think that was what we ultimately wanted when we were trying to figure out how we're gonna handle this.
I value every single board member's input. There's nobody we don't value. I don't, this only pertains to one procedure. This doesn't pertain to everything we do. And I don't know if I'm answering your questions right. Paragraph 5 gives the, outline for recommended revisions. And it basically says each submitted recommended revision by a board member will be voted upon by the entire board. I don't know that it'd be voted individually. I think everyone would be voted, but I think it'd be collective. And does anybody want to submit revisions? I mean, this is the best I can come up with to try to resolve this stalemate or issue we have with how to handle policy.
And I understand that, and I'm not trying to mess that up. Just, but wherever we land, it has to make sense. And this actually, I mean, per your own words, you had said a number of times, you said, you're not qualified, quoting you, I'm not qualified to do, but you're asking us to revise policy, something you said you are not yourself qualified to do. I don't wanna revise these policies.
Let me clarify
I wanna
that.
deliberate on
I
it.
didn't say I'm not qualified to revise a lot of separate policies. There may be some I have better qualifications, some I do and don't. So I do have some background, but a lot of them I don't.
Okay, so fair enough, I mean, but my point is, this, the way it reads right now, so it says, we're all gonna go revise these, send them to Dr. Conway, and then he can trudge through all these, which I think is a lot of busybody work to throw on him. I don't think that's fair, to be honest. But versus, we don't need to do all that, I don't think, if we can just simply deliberate on it a little bit, get to a consensus, and then the revision gets made out of that, right? If there's one even needed, versus everybody going off into the dark, rewriting an entire revising a policy for whether it be one word, or apostrophe, or a major concept, and then sending all of those off to Dr. Conway to turn around, put it back out to the board in another meeting, where we're all gonna vote up or down on those revisions, and we have to be able to deliberate on those. To me, I think we're gonna end up with a lot more discussion, a lot more deliberation in a public board meeting than we would not doing it this way. You know what I mean? Assuming anybody submits a revision. But if a lot of people submit a revision, and they all have to be voted on, and we need to be able to talk about those revisions before we can vote on them, you're talking about taking an entire board meeting just on potentially a policy, which is what we're trying to get away from in the first place.
Exactly.
But that's what this looks like it's gonna do, and
Certainly isn't my hopes that we.
I know, mine
all down to
either. I mean,
that.
that's not what that's why I just think we need to discuss this somehow, somewhere along the lines and what we wanna do with this. And it may not be here now tonight, but
Well,
at some point.
I tried to get a starting point.
You did, and and all I'm saying is I think what potentially it's going to achieve the opposite goal, and it's gonna counter what you're trying to do. But in a minimum, we still have to make sure we can deliberate in the open on some of this stuff, somewhere along the line.
Like we are now.
Exactly.
And it does say in there that any change would be come up to the entire board. And I always wanna make it clear, I'm one of 17, just because I'm sitting up here in this uncomfortable at times chair, I carry no more weight, and I wanna hear from every board member that has something to say. Every one of you is important, that's why there's one from each district. So, I don't know what else to tell you about this.
Does anybody else share my concern at all, or am I just
I do.
nitpicking? Okay, does anybody else have a comment, or?
I do.
Okay.
You've been talking for 15 minutes about something we have been talking about since August. In the spirit of this policy, why didn't you submit your concerns to Dr. Conway so that we all could have read them before we came to this meeting, so we could have been prepared to discuss your concerns? But you have been pontificating for 15 minutes
But then
about
the-
something we have discussed over and over again since August. And poor Sharon left because she has a long way to drive and didn't wanna, I'm not putting words in her mouth, but she didn't wanna stay here any longer because we keep going over this and over this.
Alright, well, that's not my problem. So first of all, second of all, this is what boards do. we discuss things. If
But we've been
if I
discussing this
emailed
since
this out,
August.
yes, but no, this came out this month. We have not been discussing this since August necessarily. The details of this, if we're gonna vote to adopt this, we need to discuss them.
This
Right?
came
We don't all
out, we
agree.
got this Saturday morning.
This came out,
So-
this came out this week, so this is brand new.
If-
On a subject that's ongoing, but so is everything else on this agenda is subjects, and things that have been going on and talked about for years. So that's not new, okay? We need to be able to discuss these things, and that's all I'm trying to do.
have.
And
We
if
have.
I,
Sunshine, not through email communication.
thank you, if I
We need
emailed this to
discuss them
everybody,
as a-
that for you to have my thoughts up front, that would have been a violation of the Sunshine Act. If I emailed them all to Dr. Conway, they would have come out about the same time this came out. And
Which is
so,
fine,
and I
then
think
could
anybody
have
reading
read
this
it
could.
and been able to discuss what you wanted to discuss.
Okay, well, then, you know, I don't have a problem with it necessarily, but I've been on a lot of boards. I've never been on a board that does that. You come to the meeting and you start asking questions about stuff. Unless you have a subcommittee where you discuss things in them, and then you roll that up to the regular board. We don't have a committee to discuss this stuff. So this is the only place left that we can legally have a discussion about a policy that we're gonna adopt that looks like it could be perceived, and I don't think it's on purpose by any means, but inadvertently could be perceived by the public as us trying to suppress deliberation on policies. And I'm trying to avoid that.
We're currently in the thick of revising all of our policies at KISKI, and we have a policy committee. We meet, we come up with revisions, we then send it out to the team. The whole school board gets to review it, and then we can have a public discussion during our school board meeting. So this is the arena to have those discussions, at least my understanding is, on policy. You know, yes, you can send your email concerns to the director, but then you have to have a follow-up conversation.
Right.
Can I ask counsel a quick follow-up question? Joe, you know, I don't disagree with you. I appreciate the conversation. I know the board's direction was, as a collective, not to go with the policy committee, so I think, to your point, this is the forum that those discussions have to take place in as a result of that. You said something that I wanted to just circle back on. If there is legitimate concern brought to the executive director, and then we'll have that discussion. It sounds like that arena is the second reading, correct? Obviously, we wouldn't have the ability to do it in the first reading, so we have a conversation then in the second reading. Did you say as it sits today, or a potential future state would be that deliberation triggering a new first reading?
Neither on that specific question. So a deliberation wouldn't necessarily trigger a new first
You said
reading.
material changes that are
Yes.
agreed upon within that deliberation.
If there is a revision,
And I guess where I'm going with this is there a middle ground that we could kind of agree on as a board to, instead of making a second reading the voting meeting, to have a second reading that would be that middle board that would allow us to, you know, have that deliberation without the expectation of a vote on it that evening? So could we have a first reading, second reading, and a voting meeting? Because that's not how it sits today, right?
correct, your current policy has, you do a first read and a second read.
And then the second read you vote.
Correct.
Right.
And then, I think you would still end up with the same result if you were to plan it as a first, second, third, or if you were to continue the pattern that exists of the first and second, the second being the voting, assuming no changes are made. But in the event that that second reading does prompt change, it then effectively becomes the next time around.
Yeah, and I
First.
appreciate that. I'm just trying to understand, you know, is there a middle ground? Because I think giving that breather of a meeting in there would allow, you know, more
So
discussion on it.
You're requesting more of a first reading, say 60-day, 2-month review period,
It's just a month, right? First,
followed by then the vote.
Yeah,
Right.
The way it is registered now, it will be a 30-day period.
right, and I'm just saying, in an effort to be collaborative here and try to work on both ends of the spectrum, is there a possibility of, you know, if we're not going down the path of a board policy, to have a second reading outside of a voting meeting to allow that buffer that I think many board members are looking for. And again, I'm just, again, throwing out ideas here.
Well, I'm open to any suggestions, because what I'll remind you again, that an individual school board is easier to do this because you got 9 like-minded members in a small group. We're putting together 17 different districts here, trying to get us all to work together as a team. That's all I want to see happen. And, of the intermediate units, correct me if I get these facts wrong here from memory, the intermediate units, there's 29?
29.
How many have policy committees, standing policy committees?
6 that I recall.
4 and 2 of the bigs, Philadelphia and Allegheny High, in the state. So we're not like a standalone, we don't have an individual policy committee. I don't care how we do the policy committee, I personally do not. I'm one of 17 and everybody's vote's important. We did have motions voted not to have a standing policy committee.
I'm not suggesting we have one, Mr. President, I'm saying in lieu of one, and even if you have one, you still need to be able to deliberate.
Yeah, well, I agree.
and whether, so, I mean, I'm putting the, policy committee aside, that's done, I understand that, I'm not asking for that. But I brought it up in that would normally be where some of this would happen, and any interested party would be, including the public, would come to those policy meetings and committee meetings and have these discussions, and it would be recorded, at least Ligonier and most school districts would record it, put out there, public can see it, they can comment, what have you. But we don't have that, and that's fine, that's what we decided. We still have to decide on policies. It doesn't matter if we're 9 members, 17 members, or 1,700 members. The function is the same. We have to vote on something that we have to deliberate in public. So 17 people, it's gonna take more than, it's gonna take longer than a 9-member board member or 200 members in a Senate. That's just the way it is. But we still have, our responsibility is to still vote on these things that affect the school here and concerns all of the sending schools and the public. So we owe it to them and everybody to be able to discuss these things in public and come to a consensus and move on. That's all. And the only concern I had here is I don't see that part of the process. That's the only thing I'm really bringing up, other than some definitions of words.
Mr. President, if I may, I think I might have identified a piece here that is clicking all of this together. So your proposal in this guideline speaks only to revisions, which is a point that you had brought up earlier. Am I correct to understand this proposed guideline then would be for those revisions? It's not necessarily speaking, is it purposefully silent on the comments and questions portion? That way, you would still continue your deliberation during the meeting. This guideline is a way for you to simplify all of the requested revisions.
Well,
Is that accurate?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I think
Okay,
I made
here's
it.
what I'll say, this way and again, every single person in this room, I value your input, I do. I wanna hear from everyone here. I'll stay here till midnight. I know a lot won't, I would.
Yeah,
But,
I don't want to either.
West Florida Intermediate Unit 7 Board Operation Guidelines for, this is for policy committee, the whole procedures, that's all this pertains to. Paragraph 5 is submission of recommended revisions. That's all that deals with. But anybody on this board can, if you have revisions, you wanna talk about them, if I just don't want anything to get lost. Okay, if you wanna talk about them, do you wanna talk about them now and have somebody try to write them down, or how do you wanna do it?
Well, I think like anything else, we discuss things. If we have a discussion in a first reading of a policy, there may not be any revisions. It just may be a matter of clarification.
But if I say tonight, does anybody have any revisions, that's a little short-sighted for me to ask you on the fly tonight. So this first reading, if you have any revisions, next month, this could very well be on agenda, bring your revisions and we'll air them. I wanna hear from you.
Well, that's it, you know it, right? So this is the part I wanna make sure we can have. We have it, to some dismay, right? And so I can go back and say, hey, I got these suggestions, anybody else? And then I can fire those in. They've gotta be made public afterwards. We have to be able to discuss them.
And that's what paragraph
So each
5
revision of
says.
itself almost, kind of gets its first read in that you can't just throw the revisions out 5 days ahead of time, everybody votes on them. We still have to build, because somebody over here may completely disagree with what, or just might need clarification. Or I might need clarification. Somebody might bring some up that I didn't think of. Oh, well, that makes sense. Well, I don't need that, so I'll retract my revision, right? So I think, I don't know that everything has to be written down every, I don't think you're gonna lose much. After the deliberation, we just kind of consolidate and then, get something else written. If we're gonna do it as the challenge is we're doing this as a whole body. And again, not to belabor the point, but those changes would go back somewhere else and get hammered out, but, it's left
That was
to
a
Dr.
choice that we
Conway.
were left with, that the
I got you.
majority wanted to do it that way.
Absolutely.
Again,
So it's on Dr. Conway now. We're putting a lot of extra work on him, it seems
I
like,
talked to
but-
him about that, how in the world? This has to all go back to him, it's laying a lot on him, I know that.
I know, I don't wanna
And-
do that
and
either, but-
the administration had I don't know how many administrators looked at this, but everybody could have had an opportunity. And now every board member has an opportunity. I want this to work for everybody, cause everybody is important in this room, everybody, everyone here. I'm only sitting up here trying to make a little bit of order in things. I'm no more important than anybody, in fact, less important than some, most. So, I hope I've answered your questions, because everything that is suggested will be voted on by the entire board, period. Any changes. This will not become, if it takes first read, it even says it'll trigger back, significant change will trigger back to another first read. And it could be another first read.
Perhaps this will be a
Everybody-
test case for us though, and we'll just kind of follow that process with this and kind of see, because I can write some stuff up that, I'm not gonna revise though, that's the other thing, it's more or less, I think board members will have suggestions or questions or require clarifications.
And we
Versus
welcome that.
rewriting this as a quote unquote revision. Because revision technically would come from the administration, they're the ones creating the first version. So any new version is a revision of that version. And I don't know the board member is gonna go home and rewrite this as a revision per se, as opposed to sending, hey, I need clarification on this, and if we're gonna start doing that, that's something we just need to be doing here, not over email.
Well, I know one board member went home and did spend a good bit of time trying to write something off the woodwork.
You.
I know one
appreciate
board
it.
member did that.
I know, and I
Then that
appreciate it.
same board member, all I wanna do is get everybody on a team here. We are a team, we're not adversaries, we're all one team. And I wanted to get everybody on the same team and get working together. And I thought this guy here, this gentleman sitting beside me, and this lady on the other side, they were consulted, they had your input. Now we're down to how many ever first readings we have to do, because I wouldn't put it up to a vote tonight if there's that. We have to get down to where we're comfortable. I think if I put up the vote tonight, it might pass, I don't know. That's not where the comfort level is.
Well, I hope not, I think we definitely need to, go ahead, sorry.
No, sorry. Dr. Conway, did you receive any communications about this policy? Or
About the
guidelines
guideline?
for- Yes, the guideline.
Not since the publication of the agenda early Saturday morning, no.
And how do you feel about the guidelines in the possibility that you could have 17 different submissions from each board member? And how would you compile that into a list and then present it to us? Sounds like it's a lot of work that's going to fall onto you.
Well, you've heard me say this before, I serve at the pleasure of the board, and I will do as directed. And what it would mean is a spreadsheet that would be created with every single revision that has been suggested. And line by line, the board would discuss and vote on each revision for whatever policy. So theoretically, you could have 17 comments that have to be voted upon each time. That's just for one policy. As the board knows in the PNNs and your portion of the agenda, there are several policies that have been backed up since this discussion has happened. And so there is a lot of work ahead on this.
Yeah, just so you know, I know that one board member did this, somewhat of an attempt on their own time to get something started to solve what I perceived as a problem. I didn't say it was the absolute solution. So I would say if anybody and everybody in this room, any board member, submit I would like to say we could take everybody's in this 1 month period, take them as an aggregate, tabulated aggregate, and if it takes, say everybody has a comment. I won't, I'm done, but, 16 of you might, and we'll take that all as aggregate, and if it takes half an hour to go through there one by one, vote them up or down, that's a solution. That way everybody has their input.
As long as we can discuss them before we vote, I'm sure.
Hey, I'm good at discussing, I'll listen, but don't expect me to have all the answers, because that's why
No, but we
you guys
ultimately
are all
we
here.
ultimately come up with the answer ourselves, whether I like it or not, or somebody else like, we'll ultimately come up with that as a body. It's important that we, and this is one thing, we're talking about policies, especially a serious policy that can affect things. We need to have a process or a mechanism to deliberate, discuss those things in the open, and then vote them.
Absolutely,
And go
everything.
back and make revisions, and this is, I mean, the revision, I don't have a major problem with the revision process in that, and I understand now a revision could be just a small segment. Dr. Conway clicked my head finally. But in having that kind of getting captured in some way, I just wanna make sure we preserve the deliberation part. That was my big concern.
Well, it says any board approved revision except for minor editorial revisions shall cause a policy to be represented to the board as a new first reading. So the minor changes will, but any change, you might have, I don't know how many first readings, until the board is in agreement that this isn't a policy. This is a guideline for a policy that exists. And I just want, hey,
It's guideline for future
I don't,
policies.
pardon me?
It's a guideline for future policies.
It's a guideline for current policy.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I believe what Mr. Vella is wanting to confirm is this guideline is not changing the normal process under the Robert's Rules where you have your standard setup. For example, school board number 17, is there any discussion for this motion? Conversation is had, and then you would have your motion to approve, motion second, action item. So this guideline is not affecting that process.
Now, this is under readings right now. It would, I believe, come back as an agenda item. It would not be under readings at that point, it'd be an agenda item for approval. That's the way I envisioned it.
So when it comes to that voting portion, that second reading, which is typically your voting portion, you would still have that discussion opportunity.
Yes. And what I'm hoping to do, since this has been somewhat of a controversial issue, get this discussed in great detail before it comes to a motion. And then all we get, if we get there's everybody here, and we just get one more than we need to pass it, that's not the goal here. The goal here is to get this as solid, as many board members as possible that agree on it. Maybe everybody won't, but at least as many as we can. I don't like to see a split vote where we made it by one vote. I wanna see the majority work through this process. And we all sit on boards. I currently, as I keep in this seat board, I sit on eight boards. So sometimes if you see me stumbling around with procedures, it's because I attend a lot of meetings and they're conducted differently, and I just want to do this right. If anybody has suggestions, have at it. This was an attempt.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I do have a question. I apologize because this may just put us into even more of just a circular argument here. How binding is a guideline versus a policy?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, we couldn't hear you.
Oh, I apologize. My question was, how binding is a guideline versus a policy?
Do you want me to answer?
Yes.
So your policies are essentially the rules for the school. That's what the school is to be following. Your guidelines, this one in particular, it's a board operation. So it's saying how the board is agreeing to operate, what your, how you're agreeing to function as a board. So it's your roadmap in order to then determine the rules for the school.
But we're not changing any of Robert's rules.
Correct, you're not changing the Robert's rules.
We're not violating any of Robert's rules. right? Is that a better way to say that? We're not,
Well, we're not
I think
modifying
both are
that.
true.
yeah, cause how could we change Robert's rules? Robert's rules are Robert's rules. I have.
Or
a
change our adherence to it. If we're not.
Our adherence to it,
No.
okay.
And I think that's what he's asking.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Any comment, questions? Okay, I guess I asked if there are any questions 3 or 4 times. If not, we'll move on. First reading will proceed, and this will not be put into place until we get some type of consensus on our board. I would like it to be a big consensus where we've got virtually, if not everybody, almost everybody in consensus, if possible.
Awesome.
That's what we're trying to do. Okay, item 22, comments by citizens in attendance. Christie, did anybody?
No, I do not have any cards, Mr. Leonard.
Okay, now we move to comments by WIU Board of Directors. The floor is open. Any comments? Anybody got any left?
Yeah,
Anything?
I do, but I'd like to probably wait till Jason returns, I'm not sure.
Sure.
He stepped out for a moment.
If there's any other board comments.
Okay, till Mr. or Dr. Conway is back, any other board members have any comment?
Oh, I'll just throw out, that plaque that the students made for us, the board members, I took that to my board meeting and showed the public and everybody. It was sweet. And I just, we have one kid we send to Clairview. Her name is Isabel. And all the kids, I think, made a plaque for all of their respective board members, so I had that one from Isabel. And I shared it at our last board meeting and the public and everything, and now I have it at home on my desk. I don't know why, it just really touched me. I don't know the girl, I've never met her, but I just thought that was so sweet, so I just wanted to share that.
I appreciate your comment, and likewise, I have special needs grandchildren that this really rings close to me. I have a couple of them. And that plaque is sitting on my counter at home, and
There
I
you go.
pointed it out, and it's a blessing.
Yeah, I just thought that was something else, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and Mr. President, since Jason returned, I did want to address the board, just to make a comment on the communication the board received the other day, and I appreciate the time to address the board because a large portion of it was directed personally at me. So first I wanted to clarify that the information presented was factually inaccurate, and simple, clear due diligence would have been able to determine that. And while I'm under no obligation to justify my attendance to anybody but Mr. President and Mr. Conway, any attendance issue that any absence that I had was excused with prior notice. But more concerning is that it was clear based on the communication that conversations have been had outside of this board or outside of executive session, specifically about me, questioning my integrity and my commitment to the organization. So I'd like to go and ask every board member here who has a concern with my commitment to this WIU. Please detail that and articulate it for myself and peers so we can have a discussion about it.
can I start?
Sure.
I personally thank you for your time. I have no problem with your attendance. Nothing negative came from this guy. I thank every one of you for being here. This is a volunteer board. None of us gets paid. So there's nobody that I don't appreciate your attendance. Every one of you, I appreciate it. So no negatives for me then or ever. I hope everybody knows what he's talking about. I did see the correspondence. I didn't like it one bit, and I didn't agree with it, and I thought it was at least very inaccurate.
Dallas, I resented the fact that you were called a dictator.
Well, not by name.
That's just one thing.
Not by name I wasn't. It was.
With the president of the board.
Yeah.
How many presidents of the board do we have?
The president of the board sometimes has to kind of dictate terms, but to be called a dictator as such, that's not very polite.
You're not a dictator.
Oh, I try not. I
But
try
there
to
were
get
so
everybody's
many,
input.
you called them inaccuracies, I called them lies.
Well, those
specific
are very similar
laws.
terms that describe the same thing, and they're very inaccurate, and I have it at home, and I've read it over a couple times. I think it should insult a lot of board members, actually, to be honest with you. If you
It
read
actually insults all of us.
'Cause
It actually does.
I appreciate you guys coming here. There's no reason I don't. And if you miss a meeting or two, I've been on this board for, I won't even say how long, but a good while, several executive directors. We struggle with quorums and attendance. We don't do that to that extent. Now, we got-
Dallas, I need to bring up an important point. Crystal, when we had a problem with attendance, didn't you provide us with the procedures that we were to follow? Up to and including giving them a hearing, am I wrong?
No, that's accurate.
We followed the procedure that our solicitor told us to do when the concerns were excessive absence, right?
You do have a policy on, board member attendance and
Right.
absences.
We've
There's a procedure
done
to
it all
follow.
right. We've done it all correctly. And that's why I'm telling you, you really, please don't take it personally, because we followed a policy. And obviously, we didn't send you a letter or anything like that.
Well, and I appreciate that, but you're almost implying that my attendance is below the other board members,
No,
and
we
that's
are
not
not. We are not. You
inaccurate.
understand?
Okay, I just wanna make sure that's clear, because,
Somebody chose
you know,
to do
simple due
that.
diligence of reviewing the minutes of the board would see that my attendance is either at or above, every other board member here. So I appreciate, you calling attention that, everything is done, according to a regulation, but, I found it extremely, discouraging. I would advocate that Mr. President, Mr. Conway, respond, and by the lack of discussion here, only three things, I'm only lead to the conclusion of three things. One, the conversation that email discussed was happening, by other board members not in attendance this evening. The school that had that conversation, is not professional enough to speak and have that dialogue this evening, or it was completely fabricated out of whole cloth and made up. So I'm not sure which one it is.
Well,
But either case,
I would like to say I did mention to Representative Rossi that you haven't been here in January or February.
that's correct. Two meetings
Yes.
that were excused by the
Well,
president
at
and
the-
by the executive director for this school year, which is, again, not accountable to you or any other board member besides these two gentlemen.
I
who
was
are here.
just, but that is factual. You haven't been here for January and February. Now, I had no idea that you had that approved. It was not relayed to any board member besides them that it was approved. When I talked to Representative Rossi, no, I'm not saying it is. I was just,
And
she asked me about your.
If you had an issue, you should have come to these two.
And I was here in January.
Not Miss Rossi.
So I was here in January, you're factually
I'm allowed to
inaccurate.
talk to my representative if I want to, and
You
she
should come
asked
to
me.
these two gentlemen.
She asked me.
He tonight is upset. And what happened there, and he has a reason to be upset.
Yes, he does.
Factually inaccurate. I was
Exactly.
here in January. Look at the meetings, please. Look at the meeting minutes.
Then I apologize.
any
You weren't here in
inaccurate-
February, though.
So,
You are correct.
so.
And it was an excused absence. As we can see, many board members are absent on occasion.
And if you had a question about about an excused or unexcused absence, why didn't you reach out to these two gentlemen?
I was asked this question, and I answered the question when I met with when I saw Representative Rossi.
And I appreciate
It wasn't.
And all I'm asking in the future is, we have a dialogue. If you have a concern with my commitment to this organization, or you go to the individuals that I'm obligated to have those discussions.
Absolutely.
Well, why isn't the board notified when a board member is excused absence?
No, it's not your business.
Why isn't it our
It's
business?
not your business.
As long as we have a quorum, that's all that matters. We have
It's
a
not your
quorum.
business.
How
If
is it?
People have medical issues, they have work issues. We don't have to explain to you why we're not here.
I'm not saying you. I'm saying all you have to say is that a absence is excused. No reason why, just that it was.
That's never been a necessity on this board in my years here, nor any other board I'm on that I know of, that we we get every board member to agree that people aren't there. That's not what I'm used to. I wanna tell you, I'll reiterate one more time, I thank all you board members for being here. Every one of you, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your input. And I have compiled a spreadsheet, I had it compiled. I review attendance, I know who's in what area of attendance, and if you remember, not too long ago, I had letters, I signed them, sent out to everybody to make sure every superintendent and every board member should have got that letter about attendance. So the insinuation in the correspondence that I saw was that we weren't being deliberate about our attendance. We are and we have.
Dallas, that letter goes on to say the IU doesn't care about education, only about money, am I right? That's a real slap in the face to us sitting here.
To me too.
That we don't care about the education, we care any about money?
It's very disparaging regarding the good work we're trying to do here. I think everybody, if you read that letter, should feel a little bit of a twinge of insult by it.
I did.
And
Calling you a dictator is completely.
well, anybody can call anybody
Inaccurate.
anything you want, but I do everything I can to get your input. If I have to go around this room and drag the input out of you, I will. You're all
Dallas, you don't
welcome.
need to explain yourself. We
No more
do
than
not
Mr.
feel
Tillman
that
needs
way.
to explain himself.
What?
No more than Mr.
Is
Tillman need to explain
Miss
himself.
Rossi
Right,
here,
that's right.
is
Mr.
Miss
Rossi.
Rossi here this evening? She
No.
seemed to be awful concerned about it, so.
She's in Harrisburg.
Well,
Where's
well, now
Okay.
that this came up,
So-
we may request a meeting with her to try to clear the record, because I personally feel that it was disparagingly unfair on me, the dictator.
Dallas,
But it-
as a board member, am I permitted to respond to her? I know her.
I can't answer that, because I
I was
can't.
insulted. I care about education.
See, here's the thing, I know her too. I've been to the Trump House,
We
whatever.
supported
whatever.
her.
Yes, I did. But I don't know if she even knows I'm the board president. I don't know whether or not. But I try not to make it so personal. It's the board president and the board she attacked. You're the board.
Yeah.
She attacked.
Although, you know, again, I was a direct target of that email, so that's why I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak this evening. And if anybody has concern with me, I would ask that you approach me directly about
We
it.
do not have a
So,
concern.
no, I appreciate that, I'm just making sure.
No, we never
I
have.
value what you folks bring to this table. I do. I seriously do. Every one of you. There's no exceptions to that. Not one.
Crystal,
So.
is there anything that stops me from responding to her comments?
You may respond as an individual, but.
As a
no-
citizen?
Correct, no one board member is authorized to speak on behalf of the entire board.
No, but I can speak for myself.
You may speak as an individual.
That's what I want to do.
Then no one board member should have supplied that kind of inaccurate
Okay,
information.
two rights, two wrongs, two rights don't make a wrong, two wrongs don't make a right, so whether or
And
not
This
that.
is why we have people who don't wanna come and sit here.
That's what I'm talking about. I don't wanna lose
Nobody
valuable
wants to
board
be that
members
target.
because of
If
this
I was
type of
Mr.
behavior.
Tillman, I probably wouldn't come back.
I hope you, that's why I'm telling you, you're
I'm just
valuable.
telling you.
Please don't do that. Don't abandon ship here.
I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
We can
Thank
agree
you.
to disagree, and again, now that the whole board's listening, I'm probably gonna talk to these two about us requesting a meeting with her. Now, that's up, just so the board knows, anybody object to that? Cause I would like to talk, to air this out, and I'll have the letter, and I've already started commenting on, in the margins of that letter. The more I comment, the more I didn't like it, cause I don't think it's a fair representation of what we do. Okay,
Dallas, it insults the IU itself.
yes, it does.
The
It insults the
IU, the
operation.
organization over there.
Insults everyone, the board members, I'm a little more insulted, and say maybe a couple other districts are a little more insulted, but I'm a big boy, I can handle it. I didn't get to be this age and not be able to handle that, I grows on it. Okay, any other comments by the board of directors?
Motion to adjourn?
That's where we're at, okay, we have a motion to adjourn, did I hear a second? Motion second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Motion carries.